going to call the meeting to order. We have a quorum present. The first order of business is approval of the minutes of the special meeting on August 20th. They were sent out with the agenda. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask first if there are any of our committee who votes to not approve the minutes. Please speak up now with a no. Are there any on our committee that abstains from voting? May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second by Duke.
That would be Sean. Who was seconding?
Duke.
Duke seconded. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna put the sound down.
I guess I got this in reverse order. I should say anybody who feels the minutes are incorrect, please let me know now. Anybody who's abstaining, please let me know now.
There's a fan in the storage room that is not fixed. All the other things are fixed and running. She had turned the breakers off because she didn't like the noise they made, and then she complained.
Hey, Mike Lynch.
Yes, sir.
Put your microphone on mute, please.
That would be a good idea, yes.
Therefore, hearing no objections, I'm assuming that all the rest vote in favor of the minutes, and the minutes are so approved. The next order of business is to discuss where we stand on all of our regulatory approvals. Thanks to Randy Giraldo. Randy?
Thanks, Kip. First update has to do with the Department of Transportation approval. We needed to get to formalize the approval and recordation of an easement to drain at the entrance to the site off of Mansfield. That required RTM sign off, which occurred on the 21st, so earlier this week. There's a series of procedural steps that have to take place now. First Selectman has to sign the easement document, has to be provided to the state, then has to be recorded on our land records, and that at that point will make this a done deal. So I'll have to follow up with Wayne Fox just to make sure that each of those steps take place, or if some of them probably already have, Kip, following the meeting this week. But there's no further impediment in terms of any real decisions that we're expecting with that. So to the extent that that step was holding up any other process, I think we've got that past us. And then I believe the next key item is just the building permits to commence construction in the coming months. So I've reached out to Peter Solheim. He's not in the office again until Tuesday. I wanted to get an update with him on where his department viewed things, but also would really just kind of turn it over to David and Amy from their standpoint as to what their input is on next steps from a building permit perspective. David, do you want to give it a shot?
Sure, yeah, so we filled out the application at this point, and now we just need to coordinate getting the documents to the building department to accompany the application and get them started on their review.
And to that end, I presume you'll need 3 copies signed and sealed of the bid documents, but I haven't double checked that that's the requirement for Darien. Usually that's the requirement. Do you know, Dave?
I'm trying to recall, Amy, what we had provided them for phase 1. I don't recall. George, I know I see you're on the call here. Do you remember? I think that was when you had first started to get involved with the phase 1 permit. Do you remember what ended up going to the town?
Yeah, I believe it's that's, but we can double check. And I think we start with the planning and zoning, and then they'll do their permitting and then send it off to the building department.
The project is already approved for planning and zoning.
Right, and then we'll just, yes, but I don't think we have a, the building application. Yet. You
The
gotta
application's
be
filled
enabled.
out, we just haven't sent it in yet.
Right.
Do you guys think it's worth some sort of coordination call with Peter's group, or do you feel like you've got it covered between SLAM and O&G?
You know,
Happy to
one thing-
organize one if you feel it's useful.
One thing that may not hurt, because things are still different at town hall, right? So as far as, you know, getting the documents and getting the application and, you know, are they taking all that stuff in person at this point, or is it, how is that happening right now with town hall? So I think I think probably a quick call could probably get us all organized and set the expectations for what they're looking for.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I know Dave Keating was just working like a day or two in the office, but there was like a drop-off box at the town hall there.
Yeah.
So, but
I've
it's
met-
worth to reach out to David and ask him.
Well, I've met recently with Peter and with the fire marshal in person, as well as obtained their signature on some other documents in person. So by appointment, you can have a meeting. I don't know if it's necessary. We certainly can FedEx the documents to their attention at the town hall as well. And they've already had a pretty thorough review done, as you know, by the third-party code reviewer. So I don't expect that the permit process will take terribly long. I don't know how extensive they're going to want to re-review the documents, but they have already received the plan review record from the third-party code reviewer. So it should go smoothly, in our opinion and in our experience.
Great. And what about schedule, David? And any key dates we need to strive for with regards to the master schedule?
Related to approvals?
Permits, yeah.
Well, just related to approvals in general, I know that once we finally get the approval to bid from OSCGR, we'll talk about that coming up. But one of the contingencies is that while we're going to be allowed to bid without ASTA's approval, we're not going to be permitted to award any contracts. So I'd say that, you know, when we're looking to award contracts right around, you know, the middle of October, we're going to need to make sure that we have the full approval of OSCGR, or we jeopardize reimbursement on that work. So I'd say that's a key milestone for ASTA that I think, you know, again, it's not too long from now needing their approval. And then with the building permit, again, they're going to likely want to get in there and start conducting some inspections relative to footing subgrade and things like that. So, you know, I'd say just to make sure we're ready by the beginning of November, we should have the building permit in place.
David, this is Kip. I just wanted to add that Wayne Fox indicated on Tuesday, that he was revising the easement language to be in compliance with the minor changes that ASTA threw at us on Monday afternoon at 4:30, and was getting it over to Jamie for her signature. I presume that she either has it now or will have it shortly, so we'll move that. That'll be moved forward. Who should that document go to, besides being on our books?
I think it should go through Craig Yanis, and Craig will push it along to ASTA.
Okay.
And he expects that they'll just have an administrative approval of that. So it should go pretty quickly.
I just spoke with Craig. He thinks it should go through Banesh. Either way.
Oh, that's fine.
I'll follow up with Will Walter and just make sure that it flows up to DOT once it's ready.
Okay, so basically Jamie signs the easement, it gets recorded on the town land records, and then you can take it to Banesh or whomever, right?
Whomever, right?
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
That's all I've got, Kip.
Thank you, Randy. You said you wanted to be involved with this. You found out it's complicated. Mr. Schreiner, status of our contracts with SLAM and ONGAP.
Okay, we're near completion. The contract with O&G is completed. We have not signed it yet, but the A133 is done. The general conditions contract, we are still discussing one issue, and this has to do with an additional section covering the potential increased costs on due to coronavirus. I think we are fairly close to that, and hopefully we will finish that off today or tomorrow. So we're close there. And the SLAM contract, we were stuck on one issue. I had a lengthy conversation with Dan Cantor last night, and I think we've figured out a good solution to it. I'm looking forward to seeing his suggestion on that section, and after that is done, I think we're complete with that too. So we're almost there.
Am I correct in assuming that we cannot go out to bid until we have these contracts signed?
That's something that I've been told, but I can't attest to that.
Well, I know one thing is that, the way the contract language reads is we do need to include our contract with the town in the bidding documents, because there's a lot of both the A133 and the 201, because there is an immense amount of flow through language from all the trade contracts. So those contracts do have to be finalized. Not necessarily, we could go out to bid today. We would just have to issue those documents as an addendum once they're signed, and that any of the real, some of the monetary information is redacted from them before they're published, but nonetheless, they do have to find their way into the bidding documents.
So obviously, before we can accept any bids, we certainly have to have those completed.
That's correct.
Okay.
But I'm anticipating that at the end of the week or the beginning of next week.
Okay, just to refresh, Rusty, what did you say again about you had the three contracts, the general conditions, SLAM, and the ONGAP. Where was the first one, the ONGAP, that was done?
We're all in agreement with that. That's just needs to be signed.
That's the A133. And Rusty, are you
Yep.
initiating that final document to come through for signature?
I haven't thought about it yet because I was going to try to do all of them at the same time. Unless there's a need to get that one specifically done a day or two ahead of time.
I don't know. We need them both. So if they both come together, once that final language on COVID gets resolved in the 201, they can both come together.
I'm waiting for Dan and also Mr. Ashforth to get back to me today. We might have agreement by the end of the day today, at which time I could take those two, which are the important ones for you, and start that signature process.
Okay. Next item of business. I think you're all through with your update, Rusty?
Yes.
Okay. A recap of the pre-bid conformance review and any follow-up items still bid to be resolved. I'm going to give that to Amy.
Thanks, Kip. I'm going to share my screen. I created a little list here. So last we left off, we received your approval on the building committee meeting on August 20th. And then we presented at the Board of Ed the following week and received their approval. Then followed up with the local officials after going back and forth with the third-party code reviewer. And Kip attended that meeting with me, and we obtained the local officials sign off. At that time, we didn't know who the 504 officer was, and we found her in the Board of Ed office. And I was able to get her signature right after Labor Day. In the meantime, we started our meetings with the state, and you'll see that we ended up having 4 meetings with OSCGR for the PCR. I'm accustomed to having 2. We ended up requiring a separate meeting for the playgrounds review. So that was a 3rd, which would be expected. And the 4th was essentially a follow-up from the first other passes at the checklist. The checklist is a 8-page document with, I don't know, 85 or so items on it. And at the end of all of our meetings, we had 5 items that were outstanding. So not bad out of 80-ish items. And we have been working to get that approval ever since. So just following our last meeting, we were able to give them the 3 out of the 5 items immediately, first thing that next week. And then the 4th item came the day after, which was the phase 1 site assessment from Langen. No action is required from the state on that. They just needed a copy. And so we got that, sent it off. And then the last thing that we sent off to them was a series of sole source request letters, some of which had to be revised that we had previously sent, and some were new. Those come from the district and then get approved by OSCGR in advance of the final approval to go to bid. So we sent those in small groups. In particular, we sent them the last ones on the 18th, so last week, and we're still pushing to get those approvals. We've gotten 2 letters approved so far, which represents actually 4 of the items. So you'll see here we have approval for sole source of the lockdown equipment, the access control and video surveillance systems, as well as the HVAC controls. And we're waiting for their approval on 4 other items listed right here. Fire detection, PA system, clocks, and the underground water detention. So,
Amy?
Yes.
Amy, we, just for reference, we've just received the Interlogic, the access control and surveillance system communication that they were accepted. I don't know that.
Oh, the fire detection?
Not the fire detection, no, just the lockdown buttons, the access control, and the video surveillance were accepted.
Yes, those are, I think I received that letter on September 10th.
Yep. Yeah, I just want to make sure you know that it's received. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, good. Oh, you mean you received a hard copy? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Good. Okay. So as long as we continue forward, I've been playing on the fine line of trying not to pester Kermit Thompson at the state, but also trying to send him reminders every day, every other day, that we need his approvals to go out to bid. So hopefully we hear back again today and get the approval. The bid documents are ready. ONG's got them, and so we're ready to go as we get the approval to go to bid.
Okay, Amy, just as a question, the letter I saw the other day from Will Walter on the underground detention system, that was part of that sole source thing as well, right?
That's correct. Kermit had asked for some additional information on the underground detention system and why that needed to be sole source.
Right.
So he wanted some further backup in addition to the letter of request from the district. And so Will followed up with him in both a phone call and then in writing.
Oh, so that's a follow-up.
Correct.
Okay.
So we at least know he's received them and he was reviewing them. So that follow-up that went yesterday was after a conversation.
Okay, and they've let us go forward with bidding once they give us approval without the OSTA easement, but we know we've got that, and we're just in the process of going through the mechanics of getting it recorded, signed, recorded, and then up to whether it's Will Walter or whether it's to Yanis. But he was satisfied with the answer. That is Kermit, that we did have it approved, I hope.
Well,
He was, yes.
So Kip, one thing just to be clear is that it's what's going to drive OSCGR's approval to award contracts related to OSTA is not necessarily the easement, just actual receipt from OSTA of their approval of the project.
Right.
It's OSTA's approval you need. Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Amy, not that they probably entirely care, but are they aware of our schedule that we want it to be out to bid by now, or?
They are, Nick, and I know that both myself and Mark Sadensky from ONG have contacted Kermit and tried to push a little bit. Certain days he's on site visits to other schools, and so you can't get through it all, but I have been in contact also with the secretary at OSCGR, so that Angela is also aware of our urgency and is helping me keep Kermit on task.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are there any more questions concerning the status of our efforts with the state? Then I'd like to ask David Cravenzola to speak about the bidding process, addendums, and things of that nature that were expected to happen over the next several weeks.
Okay, so what I don't have an update on the pre-construction schedule right now because again, this date that's driving a lot of things is really up in the air. We were planning on receiving approval from OSCGR last week. I believe the date was on the 16th, so we had anticipated going out to bid starting the 17th. We're a week past that.
Right.
But what we had initially thought about was doing a 3-week bid period for the critical contracts, being the site, concrete, and steel, and then soliciting at the same time for the rest of the work, but allowing that a 5-week bidding period. We have our documents tailored to right now. We just have to fill in the actual dates. Is 3 weeks for everything. And what we're going to do is we're going to see how that goes, because once we solicit for bids, contractors will they'll get the documents, and we have the website that they can get them from, and then as they dive into it, they'll start to ask some questions, and those questions sometimes are easily answered with just a clarification, or sometimes there are some things in the documents that have to be clarified, and that exchange of information happens all through addendums, which are officially issued to every single, they're posted to the same site so that everyone is bidding off of the same information. So based upon what we see for the, one is the involvement or the desire by trades to bid. If we look like we're getting a lot of response right away, the questions aren't too extensive, we're going to try to hold that 3-week bidding period, which will help absorb some of this time that we've lost with OSCGR's approval. And what we had previously done is we said that there was going to be a 2-week stagger between receiving the two different sets of bids, the critical and the non-critical. But really, that wasn't going to gain us much, because we know that we're not going to be able to award any contracts until we get the full breadth of the bids coming in across all of the packages. So, what we're talking about doing is we need approximately a week's period of time to take those 3 key bidders, the site, concrete, and steel, and conduct scope reviews. And just a brief on that is it's, those meetings last anywhere between 1 and 2 to 3 hours. And we, with the design team, if anyone from the committee wants to be present, we sit down with the number 2 and the number 1 bidder and we go through a whole list of questions. We review all the documents and make sure that they've included everything. If there's any clarifications, we talk about it, and then we prepare a recommendation letter to the committee to award. So the idea is that no matter what, if we can keep the critical bidders due 1 week before the rest, then by the time we have all of the critical bidders scoped and we have those approval letters or recommendation letters queued, we will take the rest of the bids. So once we know when we're going to be able to go out to bid, then I think we can talk about aligning what's likely going to have to be a special ORBC meeting that we would want to see that meeting happen the day after the rest of the bids come in. Because we'll know on bid day where we're falling budget wise. So if we fall on or under budget, then that next day we get a special building committee meeting where the building committee accepts the recommendations to award contracts to those 3 lowest qualified responsible bidders, and we hit the ground running, and then we can take the next few weeks to vet the rest of them. So there's a chance that the bidding period of 3 weeks could move to 4 weeks, depending on the RFIs and addendums and reactions we get from the trades. I think what we would want to see is worst case is that the critical site contract seal be no longer than 4 weeks, and then we would have to push the rest of it to 5 weeks. That's what we're looking at now as the maximum, but we're starting with 3 weeks for everything. I think there's a lot of people that will be interested in this project. I think that there's not a lot of stuff bidding right now, which is good too for us. So that's really our approach with bidding, to kind of absorb a little bit of time lost by the OSCGR process and to get the full breadth of the cost before we move forward with any contracts.
Are there any questions for David on this schedule?
So Dave, what's our drop dead date then to get PCR approval for you guys to launch this worst case scenario?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's all relative, right? We were targeting around a November 6th start on site. So I'd say if we receive approval by the end of this week and we can keep to that 3 to maybe 4 week period, then we're pretty much on that, right? But if it takes another whole week, we start November 13th instead of November 6th. It's kind of so does that answer your question, Nick?
It does. Anything past this week,
Yeah.
things slip a bit.
Yeah, I think what we've done with the bidding period has tried to absorb what we lost this past week.
Right.
And then after that, it's gonna push things off.
Okay.
All right, hold on. Go to close this.
Yes. Hello, sorry I'm running late.
Hi, Luke.
Hi, Luke. Sorry for my phone ringing in the background. I can't shut it up, but it'll go off. I wanted then to go into item number 7, which is review of any significant open items. I do think I want to at least let everybody know about the updated logistics plan, which was a result of our meeting last Thursday at the school site with Dr. Adelaide, Dr. Forshaw, the O&G people, and with George as well, George Gutowski, Joe Orlando, and a number of other people, and Nick Rongo, myself, and maybe, I'm not sure who wants to talk about the updated logistics plan, but maybe that would be David?
Dave, do you see the screen that I'm sharing? If you want to speak to the 3 new site logistics plans that came in this morning.
Sure.
Okay, and if you want to switch to your screen, feel free. This is just a copy of what we received.
Yeah, no, this is fine.
Okay,
This is fine.
great.
So I would say that as of phone call that we had with Mike Lynch, Dr. Adley, and Luke yesterday, that the key components still remain around the flows of traffic for the buses and the students, and not trying to really mix them and how to do that. And so we made some further revisions. The approach that we've taken now in the past week is that, so Amy, can I get the pointer or no? Do you
Yes,
know?
you can. Yep, you can just request control. It's on the Teams screen.
Oh. Okay.
And then it'll pop up on my screen. It hasn't yet. And
Oh,
when
yeah,
it
I
does,
see it. You have to allow, it looks like.
yeah, but I don't see a request.
On the top of your screen?
No,
I
I
see.
do.
you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not my, really? Oh, sorry, other screen. Yep. Go ahead. So
Okay.
you should be able to see your face soon.
Right. Well,
Can you control?
it's not sharing my screen. It's just so I can point to the screen, right?
Correct. Right.
How do I get a pointer?
It should come up automatically when I allowed. Let me see if I go out of this. View.
Or do you want me to just share my screen with those logistics plans on it?
That's fine. I'm wondering if, yeah, because now I don't have control either.
That's interesting. Yeah, and now I can't figure out how to actually share my screen now.
Hold on. Yeah, mine's not responding.
Oh, wait. Hold on one second.
Oh, you know what, Dave? Can you see the D on the screen? That's your pointer. Mhm.
Oh, really?
Yep, that's you. So I'm gonna make it a little bigger. Oops.
Okay. And then just maybe scroll over to the right-hand side of the sheet more.
Can
Okay.
you see all that?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So I think some of the key takeaways from last week's meeting were that we revised where we've moved this fence, changed it to a temporary style of fence that is movable. It's still a high fence, but it will allow for to preserve some of this grass area on the south side of the building. We still have the hard barrier, the plywood wall coming around this side between construction and the occupied school, as we've always talked about. The red lines represent the emergency egress to get students out of the building. One of the main things we changed from last week too was we had started off by taking the full area of construction in the fence in this area here, but from the get-go, that was creating an issue as far as, we didn't have the temporary parking in place yet. So what we've agreed to do is, since we have to focus our site work and excavation efforts in this portion of the building first, that we'll initially set up the fence to preserve the existing parking lot as it currently is for approximately a month to 2 months, while we let the school use it. We don't necessarily need the area, and then it will allow us to do these modifications, removal of these islands, establishment of this parking here. And I think one item we have to resolve is there any work that we actually have to do? I think there's a little curbing to be removed. Do we do that at the same time here to allow for some of those additional spaces? So we take the opportunity to do that while there's the full area, maintain bus traffic in this loop, and allow the parent pickup to be maintained in this area. Luke, was that your understanding of our discussions?
Yeah, that's definitely an improvement. So yeah, I had to step out I haven't seen these renderings until now, but that looks much better than, yeah, version
Okay.
one.
Okay, and the idea is that this work here is that we're instructing that the work be done outside of the drop-off and pickup hours. And I think it's going to work because since you do have your full area of parking, you do have a little bit of space to, shuffle some cars so that they're not right along here, and we can make that work and get this parking established before we the fringes on the south end of the existing. That's the idea. Okay. All right. So if there are no other questions on that, we'll go to the next slide. So now the next slide is showing what happens when we do get the temporary parking squared away and we expand the fence. One of the things that's changed our approach here is that previously this area of the building did not have a basement. So when we moved the basement there, unfortunately the excavation we have to do, it's pushing the fence a little further north than we had originally planned. So the rest of this work remains the same. We have our fence coming across, and now we have the utilization of the parking spaces along here, parking spaces where the islands were, parking spaces where the islands were here, the parking along here on the north side, and again, maintaining an isolated loop for bus traffic as it currently resides here, and then establishing a smaller but separated loop for the parent drop off and pickup. Really the main difference there, which was what was discussed at our coordination call yesterday. I know, Luke, this is really the first time you've probably had a chance to see it since the phone call. Dr. Adley, same with you. Is this in line with the expectations that were discussed yesterday?
Yeah, it reflects the modifications that we talked about. Clearly, the parent loop is tighter, but separating it from the bus loop was just absolutely essential. So this seems to reflect what we did discuss. Yes, thank you. It seems a good improvement.
So like I said, I think a couple minor tweaks that we're going to want to make, and we can, again, these are what will go in the bidding documents. They're already queued up in the packet. So if we get the OSCGR approval today, this is what's going to go out. I think a couple things we're going to want to just, tweak is this area here, making sure that, whatever work there is, if there's a curb removal, that we get that identified in the first slide, between November and December of the work we're going to be doing. And then we should talk about if in the realm of, making sure that we're squared away and on the same page with signage and any sort of line striping, and make sure we get that in this plan as well. Other than that, that's really, and that's going to bring us all the way through to 2022 when we transfer from phase 1 to phase 2. And the last slide is
So Dave, the total number of spots during that phase is 87?
I believe, George, do we have a count on these plans?
Yeah, I think in the upper, like the right, we got like 40 spaces on the north. And then it looks like, 47?
47, yeah, so, yep.
And 47.
Yep. About
So right around the upper 80s, Nick.
Good.
Yep.
Are there any other questions on that plan? Sorry, before he looks it over. Okay. And then this plan has remained somewhat unchanged through the iterations. We're showing the use of the new parking. It's permanent, the permanent establishment. And one thing that really is not clearly defined in here, we're going to have to find a solution, is that in the grand scheme, Buses will be following here, and I believe this will be parent when the project is completed. Luke, is that the intent?
That's
This-
correct, Dave.
Yes.
Right, okay, so obviously while we're constructing the assembly wing and doing all the site development, again, this is the area where we have that massive amount of fill that has to get brought in and new site drainage. Buses and parents will have to figure out something here for if there's an inner loop for cars, an outer loop for buses. That is something that we're going to have to address, to utilize this parking while this is under construction.
Do you anticipate that the parking will be under construction for the whole duration of 1 year that's shown on this plan? Or do you think that can maybe be developed for the most part during the summer of 2022?
I don't at this point believe that we're going to be able to turn over anything prior to the start of school. But yeah, the idea is for this to be completed certainly before the asphalt plants close, before the winter of 22 into 23.
So it will, perhaps you'll be able to utilize this bus loop sometime before March 1st, 2023. So hopefully there will be sort of this site logistics plan broken down into multiple iterations.
Right, because again, and that's also going to play into our staggered turnover of the assembly wing.
Correct.
Right, and as soon as we can get the gymnasium complete and move that function over from the, get rid of the swing space and bring the students into the gym area, the media center, music, that's the intent, is to phase that over. I would say, looking forward, some of our next tasks are to take this phase 2 logistics plan and break it into at least one more interim phase, so that it's not the 1 year duration. It's maybe a midpoint. We try to figure out where we're going to be come September 1st of 2022, and then if there's a January 1st and then a last one. But I'd say that the largest hurdle was getting over how we were going to deal with logistics, 8 weeks from now when we're out there starting construction.
Dave, this is Katie Loveland. Just about that. So when you say that you hope to further break out phase 2 sort of into chapters as to when you can stagger the turnover of that spaces, is that when you would be able to give estimated dates on which spaces will be available first, or do you know that now?
Yes. No, that's when we'll be able to determine those spaces. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, another item that is open that we're talking about is the sewer lift station, which exists today versus a new one that's planned. I guess we've had a lot of discussion on that, and we're going to have a call on Monday to discuss the results of the Langen study. Maybe you can bring us up to date on that, or David, whoever can best enunciate what's going on. By the way, the reason we're talking about this is because it's a significant cost item. It was always in our value management list, but we're only addressing it now, or we're finally addressing it now. Thank you.
Sure, so I can speak to the timing on that. We received the Langen report on the conditions of the existing lift station last week. We had a draft prior to that. And so since then, we've had multiple meetings, and we look forward to the one on Monday to further discuss how to document the reuse. But the good news of the Langen report is that the existing lift station other than their recommendation to replace the pumps, reuse of that, the body of that lift station, the well essentially that the pumps are in, is a recommendation that they're willing to go forward on with some cleaning and prep. Everyone seems very confident that that lift station can remain in use. You might recall that as a part of this project, it's incumbent upon the design team to guarantee all systems for 20 years to the extent that they're possible. So we wanted to make sure as a design team that the lift station could be in use for another 20 years. We're now also assessing the force main pipe, which goes up the driveway, and discussing if that can be reused, which we think it might be. That's part of our discussion coming up on Monday. So all of these represent a good news for the project and a significant savings, approximately $200,000 to $300,000. Is that correct, Dave?
As it's shown on the plan now, I believe the rough order of magnitude is it's approximately a $300,000 savings, correct?
Right. So this is something, that we're happy to follow up on for sure. And so currently the documents show that there's an alternate to go to the existing lift station location, which the pink lines on the screen here, if you can see this. So the sanitary would come out of the new building. So here's the new building. The sanitary line would come out of the new building basement. There's going to be a catch basin, and then location where we can connect to a pipe. This will be the same in the design as it is today. This red line goes up to here, and the pink line will lead to the existing sanitary lift station, which is very light gray box under my cursor in this area. And we will not need to build a new lift station as shown right here.
Amy, for the sake of the committee, you say that the design team was making sure that whatever was put in was have a 20-year life. Is that based upon the state's requirement?
Yes, it is. Yeah, the state requires that in a new building project, or in a renovate to new project, whenever their funds are, the state funding is being utilized, that's the requirement of the new building. And certainly a force main life is 50 to 100 years. So that's why we're looking to make sure that if we can reuse the force main, that's an even greater savings.
Correct. Okay, well, I'm just saying, I'm just giving a hypothetical. I don't want to have a long discussion on this one right now, but if you're able to save, let's make a number up for the sake of argument, $500,000, and yet you don't meet the 20-year number, so the state's not going to give you any money for this particular, they're going to call it an ineligible expenditure. Aren't you ahead of the game? With only 10% of our money coming from the state anyway, or 11%?
Sure, and that's, certainly a decision that the town and the building committee is able to make. It's sort of a unique situation that you're in. It's not unique, but a situation that you're in as the town of Darien, where you only get 10 to 12% funding from the state. It's very different than a project in a city where they're getting 80% from the state. So
right.
Your cost benefit ratio or analysis is very different.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that it would appear that we have to take that into account when we try to figure out the proper solution here, even though it may not be a quote 20-year guaranteed life, but actually according to what Mike Lynch has told us, those pumps are oversized and they're not being used much. I mean, they're not being strained at all. Anyway, we'll talk about that later on Monday. I just wanted to throw it out. Those are the two big open items I'm aware of right now. Were there any others that we should talk about at this point?
That's all that's open on the design team's end. That and chasing the state for an approval.
Obviously, yeah.
My biggest job.
Then I'd like to then ask, turn it over to Katie and Duke about when we have to sit down and with the parents and the neighbors again.
Hi, everybody. I think that the parents and neighbors would, well, I'll speak for the parents anyway. I think that they would love to hear from us whenever we're ready. It's been a really busy time right now with back to school and the changes that have gone along with what back to school looks like. So whenever we're ready, I think it would be a good time to have a conversation. I know that I've been in contact with this year's PTO chairs, and they're sort of just waiting for us to get on their schedule.
Do you think?
So
do you think?
Katie,
Okay.
Go ahead, Kip.
No, go ahead, Duke.
So Katie, any feedback? I mean, we did a pretty detailed presentation at the last Board of Ed meeting and have those documents out there. I truly do see the need to address that community specifically, but did that help? And just how did that go over?
So I thought that presentation was great, and it was good to get those drawings out there. I do think that presenting to the Board of Ed is different than presenting to the Oxbridge community specifically. Right now, a lot of people are turning into Board of Ed meetings, but at that point, probably not as many that would be focused on the school. And I also think we have some really exciting things to share. People haven't seen the images that we're working with. So I think that would be great. It's also a really nice time to provide some good news and hope for the future. So we've got that going for us. So I think that what happened at the Board of Ed is a really good starting point, because if we think back to the last time we were in front of the Oxbridge community, it was a while ago, and we still didn't have the images that we have now. And I think that the question that I'm hearing most right now too from the parent perspective is, how does COVID affect this project? Is it still happening? You know, originally at our last presentation, we had said that the enabling phase would happen over the summer and that we would have demolished part of the building. Well, that obviously changed, and I think that some people might be thinking that construction is just on hold. So even just reiterating how we're going to manage those things simultaneously would be good information.
I tend to
So
agree.
that's great, and I know that the focus at Board of Ed meetings is on other things right now. So I think in the interest of everyone's time, if it's all right with you, Kip, Katie and I can take this offline and look at dates and venues and how we do that. But I think, you know, we've got the core with what Kemp and Amy did at the last Board of Ed meeting, and with the updates today, I think we're at a good place to inform that community.
That would be fine.
This is Sean. I just might make one recommendation, that everybody sit tight until we get all the bids in, because if the bids come in over 63 million, there's going to be some serious discussions that are going to take place before we go anywhere. So I think my recommendation before going public again is, I think we ought to wait till, 4 weeks for when David gets the bids in and see where our numbers are. Everybody's thinking about everything else right now, and I don't think another month is going to, make or break the community. But I tell you, I think if we tell them what we're going to do and then pull back on it, I think that would be a mistake. So my recommendation is that we wait until we get the numbers.
If that's
Katie, you've got a good feel for the community.
Yeah, so if that's the plan that we want to go forward with, I would suggest that maybe to kind of straddle that line, we let the parents know that we're planning a presentation for them once bids are in. I think just even having that communication to say, look for us to be bringing you a presentation in November, early December, I think that would be a good move.
So, and then maybe within that communication, Katie, we point again to the documents in the presentation that was made at the Board of Ed meeting for reference, but we'll see you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. We can always link back to.
Luke's shaking his head, so that's good.
I agree. If I can just interject, I think that it would be great to target the presentation to just before the construction starts, and rather than say that the presentation would be November or December, if Dave's going to be mobilizing on the site in November, I think it's probably wise to use the very beginning of that month to do our presentation.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you, Amy. I think that the end of October, very beginning of November is that target.
Exactly, especially because the logistics plan will be very important to the parents that want to know the traffic and everything like that. And I think it's very important.
Good.
Okay, well, no, I would agree to have Duke, if you and Katie would figure out, you know, what the content should be, and I think that the idea is to do it again after, as Sean has said, after the bids are in, but well before construction starts.
We do have our annual evening event for families in October. And so if you just want me to give a shout out to the idea that more to come, that's an easy way to get the word out.
Okay.
And
Great.
And Luke, also for you, as far as, you know, managing the staff at the school, what we typically do too is, you know, our team will come in, and if there's I don't know if you're doing faculty meetings or if they're all virtual, but, you know, we'd like to, before we mobilize out there, same thing, you know, kind of introduce the team, that, you know, the faces that people may see, and just kind of give them a perspective of what things are going to be like as well. So I would say around that same time frame, we should target on the ONGAP team, you know, going before your faculty, so that they're on board as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think we talked in the spring, and I was already had you on my mind for the November meeting. But I can get you those dates ahead of time, so we can, and we're doing it all virtual, so that'll be fine.
Yep. Okay. Great.
So Dave and Amy, just FYI, and anyone else who doesn't participate in 5+ hour Board of Ed meetings, which I'm not sure why you would not participate, but our goal is we are going back full time next Tuesday. Thanks to the Herculean efforts of Dr. Adley and the team and the teachers and the students and the parents. As you all know, and Dr. Adley will reiterate, that can change daily, but we are there for a full reopening on Tuesday. So just FYI to you folks.
That's great. Best of luck.
Talk to me on Wednesday.
Wait a minute. I thought you were on vacation starting Wednesday.
Yeah, we're going. Alan and I are going to Ireland golfing. If you want to come.
That's what I heard.
There's going to be a cardboard cutout of Dr. Adley right where his picture is, right there in the Zoom meeting. There's going to be no one there.
All right. Are there any other matters to discuss at this building committee meeting? Any other issues?
Hey, Kip, just FYI, and again, we met in the interest of everyone's time, take it offline, but Mike Lynch and Luke and I had a call this week about the soft costs and furniture and fixtures in line with your goal of getting information around that by early October. I think we just need to set up another call, perhaps with Amy and the team over there. I know people have been in and out around technology and furniture. Mike Lynch knows the schedule of ordering and how this works. And there's kind of a phased approach to this based on how we're building, but we did have a conversation this week around it. I just think we need a follow-up call, Amy, with the team so that we can have a sense of what Kip feels we need, you know, early October around the numbers.
Sounds good.
That's great.
Just one issue I would have is, as we planning for the meeting with the Oxbridge School community, parent community, is probably a good timeline for it to fit. I, for one, and it might be the only one, want to talk about whenever we move in to the transitional part about these buildings and the gyms and the use of the spaces, the big spaces, and how we're actually doing that, like logistically, and just to check the boxes off. I just would like a dedicated time to, okay, let's talk about this cafeteria again. Let's talk about how this is going to work out, because it's there, we describe it, but I just think that the details of it we should revisit again at some point, and maybe certainly before that parent meet would be a good time to at least that gives us a deadline to work to if we want to, but I would find it helpful. I don't know if Luke would or anybody else would, but I think it would be important.
I agree. That's a good call.
Okay, so bringing those facilities online, how and when is the topic.
Yeah, and basically we're starting with, okay, what does it look like again? Let's just go back to 101. What does that look like? And how do we operationalize that? And what are the challenges that we still have to, like, I have to get stuff in motion with other things to make it happen.
Right. Okay. All right. Is there any public comment today? Hearing none, I'll look for an motion to adjourn. Do I have a motion?
Motion by Sean.
Sean, motion, second?
Second, Duke.
Duke. All who do not want us to adjourn, please speak. Otherwise, I take the silence meaning. We are all adjourned, and thank you all very much again for this meeting.
Thanks, Kip.
Thank you all for your time. Have a good day.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.